I know a small bit about your wheat. To give people context, conventional wheat is grown anywhere from 160 to 220 units of nitrogen. You grow crop wheat on an awful lot less than that in recent times.
Somewhere between 60 and 80 units, but there would be some organic manures used, be it slurry going out on the growing crop.
So I suppose we're always in base trying to set separate sort of targets in terms of people love talking about yield and people love the ego of that, but we try and talk about margin in base. So did your crop yield as much in those 80 units plus a bit of muck? There was a yield reduction?
There would have been, yeah.
Roughly, what are we talking?
Probably, but it was probably as high as probably 0.7 or 0.8 of a tonne this year.
Okay. And then on the margin side of that, when you reduced the nitrogen, what other inputs were you able to cut back on? I'll give more context here. Traditional wheat gets 3 fungicides in the year, spending anywhere up to maybe 70 or 80 euros an acre.
We would have been often using 4. It was in the context.
Absolutely.
So there was no fungicides used.
None.
No. There would have been no growth regulator, no insecticides, and I would be using herbicides.
Yeah, when you're not doing so bad, cutting out all the other stuff. And was this a sudden change, or was this something you kind of built up to over time? And how did you find your way to this?
In the last 3 or 4 years, maybe, or 5, and where I would have been growing some spring crops maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where there would be no chemical fertilizer used, animal manure only. And then there was a year when there was winter barley sown, where I think it was 2018 or 2019, a wet year, and then it was followed by a dry February. And there was slurry applied to a growing crop, I think it was. And then I was going to wait until the crop started to fall back. It was a winter barley crop. And I was waiting and waited a long time, and it never really went back. But winter barley was usual, when I'd be coming into the growing season. People were talking about it, waiting before you put on your fertilizer, but I waited, but I ended up putting on very little and taking off a reasonable crop off it.
I was seeing in your crops quite a lot.
Yeah.
Once a week?
I'd try it in that growing season. And then it was going forward, whether I suppose I should do it, but kind of in a mindset that in a few years done, that I'm less inclined to go back to fungicides. If I'm going to establish crops better, I'd be happier to get them right from the start.
So you've pushed on the stuff there, and you've pushed that side of it, and now that's okay. You're not going to push any more there at the moment, and maybe focus on the autumn, maybe an establishment a bit more.
Yeah.
Fair play, Alan. This is no mean achievement. We'll come back to you on some sheep and veg now in a while. Skip over here to James. Whereabouts are you, James? What kind of land is, and what was the traditional enterprise before you got stuck into all this mad-based stuff?
We're based in Kildare. We've a sandy, silty loam. So we're winter finishing beef, winter finishing lamb, and tillage as well. I'm 10 years farming now, and under my own steam came out of plough one pass conventional green book system, what most people are aware of it. Started bringing in cover crops in 2017, started bringing in short-term grass into the rotation as well around the same time. Expanded up on them, started cutting out meal for the sheep. They're just extensively finished. And we I suppose we have winter barley, winter wheat, oats, rye, peas, beans. We used to have maize and rape, and maybe a bit of spring barley and maybe spring wheat the odd year. So we always had a pretty good rotation anyway. 2021 there moved to direct drilling. That was a bit of a shock because I'd never even drilled a crop in my life. So that was.
You were the contractor doing that work before?
Yeah, I was the contractor doing one pass. I just did the ploughing. The obvious benefits came out, like the diesel bill went down quite quick, and a lot more time. So yeah, no, it's been fun, and started melting urea and reducing inputs. Like the season just gone, all the cereals only got one fungicide. Barley rye got none. We're insecticide free for 6 years. My peas, which anyone who's had peas know they're fun to harvest at times, and they're the one I do the most experimenting with. So they're chemical fertilizer free, fungicide free, insecticide free. Just herbicide is the one.
I can say here, because there's a lot of organic farmers here, where we come from in the context of tradition, that's a big deal, you know, and I suppose you guys will say, oh, sure, granted, but this is huge to be able to get from the way we know to farm, the way how we were reared and taught how to farm by the previous generation. This is very disruptive stuff and big steps forward. Was that no-till transition a roller coaster, and do you have any kind of scars to prove it, or would you know, indulge us one or two things that you wish you maybe had done more of, or maybe something you did that you wish you didn't do?
I'll always look back on it and it's the obvious things that stick out. Going into wheat after grass, we had grass going in for hay production for the equine market. Sure, of course, what you do when you make hay, it matures, you seed heads, you batter them out, and then sure you spray it off, you stick in a crop of wheat, and what do you get? Loads of grass. So yeah, learned the hard way on that one. Sure, what's it here?
Are you evolving to a different system there now with that one?
Yeah, so trying to, year just gone, kind of terminated the grass area, put in a cover crop and got the flush and tried to work that way, but still had to keep using herbicide in crop when the wheat was in. And this year our first cut hay wasn't cut till September, so there's plenty of seeds, so I'm going to put that in the silage for a year and hopefully get on top of those.
It feels like you've quite a flexible approach, that you don't sort of take the year for granted, that you sort of maybe play the game as it comes along. Is that a fair comment?
Well, I try to, but I suppose the mixed farming kind of plays into it too. Like we're 100% all our own feed for finishing the cattle this year. Last year was almost that. I got a neighbour to grow maize for me. I ended up a little bit short by a small bit of feed, but trying to keep it more in the farm gate. So if something doesn't go right, sure, look, hold crap, but I have a market for it. So.
And you're independent of the ups and downs of the grain market there. And you told me yourself that it feels good to know exactly what you're feeding your animals.
Yeah, well, you know exactly what's what's going into them. Like some places you go to rationing, it can be an issue with consistency of what's in it. At least I know exactly what's going in and when and how, and I know it's there.
Could you speak to me about your first base meeting and what it was like to have a whole load of lads come down and say, what are you doing here? And that sort of conversations that happen, they can be sometimes maybe difficult, always a good bit of crack about them, and how helpful was it?
Yeah, I suppose context to this, I was only in base about 3 weeks and I looked for a volunteer, and of course being an idiot, put up my hand, and I'd only just started direct billing. So I said, sure, who better to get them? And a bunch of people who were at it for a lot longer than I am to critique it, but I had a lot of insights, and we had a field that was in maize that I tried putting in an understory that didn't work very well, and there was a bit of rubbing, a bit damp, but I had lads who were, you'd consider hardcore direct driller saying plough it. So you had every sort of solution and option coming towards you. So yeah, it was very informative.
That was a great meeting. I was very impressed with what I'd seen. It was like you were in base for 5 or 6 hours, but then you came along, you're already well ahead.
Like 5 or 6 years anyway.
Yeah. And I suppose there is that, look, life is simple. You can have strong feelings about tillage and stuff like that, but the fact is you need to farm your land and you need to grow a crop.
Yes.
So, yeah. We'll move over to Ross there. Ross is, I suppose, the diverse nature of Base Ireland. We have all kinds of farmers. And Ross, you can tell us a bit about what your setup is at home.
Yeah, so I'm organic farming at home. I suppose back 2008 I took over a part of the farm that was in continuous tillage. My brother went into organic from a grassland base in around maybe 2010, 11 kind of, and he started growing crops for flatheads. So he was growing oats, and he was getting 2.5 ton, taking in around €300 a ton. I was looking at my conventional side where I was growing oats, barley, maize, a couple of different things. I grew oats same year he did, and I got in a frost heave, and I think I did about 2 ton, and I got €120 a ton, and all that pretty much went back to the merchant. So at that stage, you just have to sit down, and I did the maths. And majority of people really go into organic because of the bottom line, to be fair, and they also embrace the environmental side once they go in, and the challenges of it. So I went in 2015, again from a tillage situation. I wanted to make sure that I could grow tillage crops because that's where I saw the margins for me, where I saw my markets. So I went and put all my tillage fields into grass. So I went into basically a clover ryegrass mix. A couple of fields maybe went into red clover. I had no fencing. I fenced the whole farm. We got into sheep as well. And we had cattle as well. So that's how I started off. I suppose now what I've come to, and my plan is I have 50% in tillage and I have 50% in grass. So on the tillage side of things, I'm growing oats and flattens. Again, this year around 1.7, 1.8 tons. I think there's a base price of 385-ish this year. And then on the barley side, we grow barley for Waterford Distillery. Now, my brother and I, we grow a batch, that's 120 tons. So they need to keep that separately, it goes down to Dalton's, it's stored separately, it's distilled separately, and it's bottled. So Waterford's market is basically saying that we can bottle whiskey and we know exactly which field it comes from. And that's their selling point. They've got organic whiskey and they know exactly which field that's coming from. So we hope in hopefully next year we'll have whiskey, Blacker, organic whiskey.
I noticed you didn't mention the price of the distilling barley. Is that a secret?
I think it's 505 base, so worked out maybe 105.40-ish.
Fantastic. Because as a conventional farmer trying to grow as much as possible and we get the commodity price, you're grossing more than me on lower yield because of a great price for a niche product, and you're spending an awful lot less growing. Has the bottom line improved?
Oh, bottom line has definitely improved. I was spending 40,000 a year for my local co-op. Now that's probably 2,000. But I suppose it's important to take note that it's not just a great margin for that year and maybe 2 years or 3 years, but then I'm putting it back into multi-species sport and grazing with sheep. So there's a good cost in that. And when you spread it out over, maybe 10 years, the margins come down, but still, I feel like I'm definitely better off than what I was conventionally. And I suppose that's the reason why so many people are looking at organic now. Payments have come up, so it isn't incentivizing an awful lot of people. A lot of people are nearly organic anyway, so it kind of just makes sense. And the restrictions aren't as tough as people think either in organic.
Are you enjoying it more?
Look, it's more of a challenge.
You mentioned you got sheep.
Yeah, we did, yeah. Hardship. Yeah, well, my wife came on board as a partner and she was always big into sheep, so I said, look, we'll get a couple of sheep, and then we ended up getting about 150 ewes at the moment. She's involved in a lot of that, the planning and the breeding side of things. We sell roughly half the land goes down to ICM Colan, where we get 15% on the base price, which is roughly between 10 and 20 euros a lamb, depending on the time of year and the price. The other half then we sell in a box. So we've got Black Organic Lamb business going, and it's just run through Facebook and Instagram really, and people can just order a lamb to their specifications. We send it off to the butcher, and the butcher then we collect it from the butcher and we send it off to Ireland. There was one due into Germany yesterday, the day before, France. So there's quite a demand for it.
And the amount of setting up to get that going wasn't too dramatic. It was manageable to get it up and started.
Yeah, look, there is a lot to it, I suppose. Once you get set up, there's a whole hassle thing as well. There's a lot of different hoops you have to jump through, making sure you have an organic butcher, but getting deliveries right, making sure they're there on time. So there is a little bit of a setting up, getting the boxes right, what boxes are going with the ice, etc.
Fantastic. How are we doing for time, Sean? Are we okay for it?
We're good.
Yeah. So I'll come back around to Alan on the sheep there. And your sheep enterprise evolved and you changed quite a lot in your breeding and everything. Could you tell us a bit about that journey?
It started with Easy Care breed, and I've held them ever since. I have no sheep shed. It's an outdoor-based system, and they're wintered on fodder breed. Set a lamb outdoors 2 weeks after leaving the fodder breed, and they rotationally grazed, and we're using some multi-species crops, and I also grazed some cover crops with the sheep as well. So.
And you mentioned to me, I know that we have sheep at home, and sometimes the lambing can be fairly difficult. And you said that you don't handle that many lambs, and you equated that to differences in what you were feeding meal, was it?
I suppose once I moved away from feeding meal at trucks, felt that, and it's probably to do with the breeding as well, or the breed lines, but the breeding, the actual breed of sheep, but would maybe handle one sheep in a year, like that's
fantastic. Yeah. Just because they weren't getting moved.
But I'd say, like, if I went back to years, there was suffrag's in the flock, and and heavily fed with meal maybe, and lots of, when sheep are getting hooked around at trucks,
turning the lambs
Yeah,
and making them
yeah.
I thought that was very interesting. And I suppose you have this Easy Care flock. It's not a labour-intensive sheep operation. You're a busy man on the veg side of things. Is that why you've kind of gone this way in the sheep?
Yeah, in performance record the sheep flock, so there's a good bit of work in there with have to associate the ewe to the lambs at birth. If it weren't at that, there would be very little labour involved at lambing.
So you go down to feed the lambs and you start looking and saying who's belonged to who and who's belonged to what. That's good.
You have to go often enough, I suppose, maybe 3 times a day, maybe, because to leave life a bit easier because if you don't want.
Yeah, pandemonium.
Yeah.
So let's go across to the veg enterprise. You have established a route to market over a long period of time. Somebody
Probably.
I'm not going there first, please. And so your route to market is direct marketing in a couple of different locations, is it?
3 different locations. Yeah.
Maybe somebody could give that man a hand to switch it off. Sorry.
So we direct sell our markets 1 day a week, Saturday, 3 different markets. One in Offaly, one in Galway, one in Kilbeggan. And I suppose back to years, we would have been supplying small shops and that trade early in the 2000s. It just fell kind of quickly enough. And our local shop closed, and then we started the market there on a Saturday, and we kind of took off from there. Holding their own all the time, I suppose.
What is that?
So it's I suppose the fact that we are trading for are growing, we prefer to grow and not trade. So you end up growing a lot of different crops. Could be 20 different crops throughout the year, and like that's from cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, carrots, parsnips.
You know a lot about vegetables then in terms of your growing a pretty diverse mix there. You get to meet your customer. What's that like?
I suppose that's where the reward comes from. Like even growing grain as a grain grower, the grain is delivered maybe by our own trailers, but I wouldn't even be delivering it, and that's the end of that. Like I suppose when you're direct selling, and there can often be a queue, people waiting to buy, like you get your goods out of that, like, and that is good. It is rewarding. Yeah.
Do you think there's an opportunity there to maybe take feedback on board, that if you were going to change the direction of the business, it could be customer led, or do you sort of just say they're happy with what they have and that's it, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I suppose, I don't, probably could improve maybe to get some feedback in time to come, kind of plugging along as we are, and I suppose once it's holding, we're okay.
Probably a busy man on that day anyway to be.
Yeah, but you're probably busier the day before, the day before that,
I know very little about growing vegetables, but could you speak to me about your selected herbicide use? You sometimes feel like, it's just too difficult to grow certain ones without herbicide, but by and large, you're herbicide free in a lot of them, is that true?
So green vegetables, would say, are grown by a propagator for us, so you receive them in modules. And I would say we succeed in without chemical 95% of the time there, through mechanized hoeing. So you sow your plant, maybe 10 days later, you go in, it's a hoe mounted on the front of the tractor, so the steering from the tractor is mounting this. When you're going slow, you can get in close to the plants, and you do that when the plants are small, and then you go back maybe 10 days later, and you're more aggressive the next at that time, and you're throwing some clay in towards the sides of the plants, so that's taking care of any little weeds that are beneath canopy. And then if you get a chance, you might go back the third time, you might not. But there's no hand weeding of those crops afterwards. If there are weeds in them, the crop tends to be out before the weeds are giving you trouble. Then you have the likes of onions or carrots or parsnips, where it takes an awful long time for the crop to come up, and because they're sown from seed. So kind of did try it a few times, mechanical hoeing there, but when you have much of a crop to harvest afterwards, it kind of straightens you out. on the.
But you're always asking that question, can we do better, can we leave something out? You're not an organic farmer, but there's a lot of stuff here that is real good farming and you've got a high quality product. You're using your discretion as to say where you can and can't use product, yeah. And then there's a small bit of herbicide on the carrots.
Yeah.
Mighty stuff. It's great stuff, Alan. Thanks very much. James, what I want to do as we're kind of moving on towards the end of the conversation is say, like, we know roughly where you've come from and where you are and what you're doing at the moment. Do you have anything in your business that you're looking towards now, like the next phase? And what I'm getting at is like the pace at which people change is something we always talk about in base, that a very sudden change is disruptive by its very nature. And we all have a lot of scars to prove it, and there's some great tales of where people have gone wrong, and we share them so that other people hopefully won't have to make those mistakes. So in terms of a sudden change where you're learning an awful lot, there's a couple of trailblazers in base and they're unbelievably, brave to change. And then there's lads who are a bit slower, who maybe could do it, maybe pushing on. So where do you fall in that sort of scale? And what's next?
Probably somewhere in the middle. I don't know. It's like anything, only change as much as you're able to cope with. As long as it's not keeping you up at night. That's the main thing, really. Some things I've fired myself in, and other things a bit more reserved on. Looked at probably start using home safe seed this year. Probably start moving more into that. And biological seed dressing. I suppose the one that kind of put me on that one was Nigel Gillett, that thing he had, the samples, the pot samples. It's like picture tells you.
That was a demonstration of something he'd done with a very big visual result, and you said, "I'm doing that."
Yeah, you had the standard dressing fungicide on our naked seed, this home safe, and home safe a couple of different biological ones. It's just chalk and cheese the whole way across, so it makes sense. And now look, most lads will say, "Who are you doing it?" You mightn't have any difference in yield, but you've got a better root system, so and it gives you that more resilience as you're going through.
And the Nigel Gillett sign up probably told you absolutely everything he knew about it and got you going.
Oh, yeah.
Get that sort of information all the time. And I think in that, when you say it might get you more yield, this is a dangerous thing. That the convention is, how much more did you get? And we're all programmed to think, how much more did you get? Is it possible you got the same with less input afterwards? And that's a win as well.
Yeah. It's again with kind of moving over to melting urea and applying it. Like we're back. So like winter rye got 70 units, winter barley 90 units, winter wheat 100, spring barley 50. So cutting back now, my yields are back. And like the first year I did it, we're looking at sort of 25-30% reduction in yield, but I had a bigger tax bill, so it wasn't too bad. And that was in the year where fertilizer went nuts. Grain hit 350 a ton. I forward sold some at 200 and 250 a ton. Most at 250 a ton.
Wow.
So, it's still a bit
still more resilient, still a better, kind of a safer way to farm.
Yeah, well, a conversation I had with my Glanbia manager. When you're saying this about reducing inputs and cutting back, it's like, you're not worried, you're not making more of a risk. It's like, well, I'd feel more comfortable trying to grow a 3.5 ton crop of winter wheat than trying to push it and grow 4.5 ton, because I've only ever grown one crop that I ever hit 4.5 ton in my life.
So trying to.
That was 2015, where if you just went and sneezed at the crop, everything was record. So,
Yeah. That's an interesting one, that the intensive operation that is like betting on the favourite. You put huge money down and you're hoping the favourite comes in. And if it comes in, it's fine, but if it doesn't come in, then
it's like winter finishing cattle, it's big risk and then small return. Yeah, it's
And on the cattle enterprise, you're going to stick with something similar, and it's going to keep growing your own stuff and rely on your own forage and keep it the way it is for now.
Yeah, moved away from maize and brought in more crop rye to try it, because I can sow rye and less disturbance in the ground. But I started looking at maybe direct selling, but I suppose with the land there, maybe start small and going big on cattle, but it's an option.
Have you seen your soil change?
Yeah, I suppose like Scott mentioned, like the first year you kind of feel soil almost goes like concrete, because it's that kind of collapse that happens, but it's starting to come right. Like you can go up and your fingers start going down into it without much force. And I'm only a couple of years down it, but again, it's, in fairness to my dad, there's a lot of things done right. Farmer, more slurry, rotation, it was there, so building on that and moving on from it.
Great foundations there before you ever came along with all these base notions. Yeah, and that's something we talk about a lot as well. Context comes up again and again. At the North course, right, you got Gabe Brown over, he said that, your context locally is everything, and information you absorb and the people you talk to, you take that home and you stew it and you've come up with your own version of it. And eventually you start answering your own questions because you're around these people who kind of discuss these things quite a lot. And that's maybe where, you know, the inspiration from some of these guys, people can go home and sort of start equipping themselves to start answering their own question. And, you know, there's incredible information in this room outside the base. I'm going to ask you a very similar question there, Ross. You know, your transition, and now that you're established and you're up and running, and it sounds like you're doing a super job. Do you see the thing evolving more from now? Are you going to stick with what you're at, or what's the next thing for you on your journey?
Yeah, pretty much happy where I'm at now at the minute. Probably stick with where I'm at. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way, I suppose, so just happy now to just keep my rotations up. If other market opportunities open up, I'll be jumping in. But at the moment, I have a good rotation with the sheep, putting in multi-species swarm, red clover, trying to build that resilience and build fertility for the breeding crops. So yeah.
Your grassland doesn't stay in the grassland; it goes all around the farm and it follows around the territory. So there's never an exclusivity. But the rotation is used to build your nutrient before the grain crops and back again. Is that just? Yeah,
and I also add nutrients as well. Like it's not like I just sow it and shut the gate. I do import sometimes cattle slurry, poultry manure, plough it in, and then I shut the gate and forget about it, and then get the harvester in, and that's it. Grassland, I have put in a lot of multi-species. I started off, as I said at the start, that I put in a lot of ryegrass and clover, and I kind of learned a lesson there pretty quickly that you know, it didn't really work for me. The ryegrass it stretched it in with that nitrogen, and then if you get any kind of a drought, it just doesn't perform. Then I put in multi-species swort, and then I realised how well it was working in 2018, and everything else just died around it. The chickweed, the plantain, the red clover all kept going, and it was amazing the difference. So from now on, yeah, I'm putting in multi-species swort. And again, look, there's a grant for it. There's €300 a hectare for putting in multi-species swort, whether you're organic or conventional, it's there. And some people say, oh look, it will only last maybe 4 or 5 years. That depends on how you treat it, how you manage it. It has to be managed slightly differently. But you know, anyone who's putting it in or is thinking about putting it in, if the worst comes to worst after 4 or 5 years, you're left with why you would start with in the first place was a ryegrass clover swort. So it makes sense to put it in and try it out.
Mighty stuff. There's one small thing here. We're always focused on the transition. If guys are making a transition to either more regenerative or organic, that if you make a big mistake, you can get a little bit gun shy and you can get a bit like afraid. And if you can get a couple of successes under your belts, it'll kind of get you nice and confident. You mentioned that there's a notion that before you go organic, you have to load on a lot of nutrient to kind of get you ready for a lack of it. And you had some experience in that regard, and you had some advice in P's and K's.
Yeah, so again, talking to other farmers who think about going in and say, oh look, I'm going to have 3 bags of 10-10-20 or 4 bags of 10-10-20 before I go in. And that's fine in some circumstances, but for me, in my tillage situation, I'm importing poultry manure, dairy sludges, and they're all very high in P. So you can soon find yourself at index 4 where you can't import at all. And the reason I'm importing is not really for the P or the K, it's mainly for the nitrogen. So I won't be able to import any kind of organic nitrogen if my P levels go high. So I'm watching those. I've changed from using dairy sludges to poultry manures, maybe about 2 tons an acre, maybe a little bit less depending. And then once it goes into multi-species or red clover, then it's pretty much not getting anything. But look, I'm keeping an eye on the soil tests and seeing what I'm at, and if I need to put on more, I will, but I'm just reducing it down all the time.
So the warning is more and more can get you into trouble where you get to a limit where you're not allowed to put anything on, so you don't want to go above index 3 because you're just banned from putting on.
Yeah, and that can be fine if you're in a grassland situation and you've got plenty clover. You're happy out, you've got high P's and K's and you work away. But anyone's putting in the mix of it, putting in probably white clover and red clover. Red clover or red clover silage works very, very well for me. It just doesn't stop growing. Every time you turn your head to look at it, it seems to be a little bit higher. It's amazing how much it grows, even compared to your multi-species swort, and then you've got your ryegrass swort. So definitely in your multi-species swort, again, you want to put in ryegrass as well, just for that early growth and late growth, but you want your Estonians and you want your chicories and plantains and your fescues and your timothys and your chicories. I put in about 16 different mixtures in just to see what will grow on my farm. People say, oh, don't do this, don't do that, but I want to see, every farm is different, and I want to see what worked on my farm, and it seems to be working pretty much okay.
I think that's a fantastic approach. that nobody's going to tell you. You're going to have to find out for yourself, and you're bold enough to go in and try enough, so that then the second year you have some answers, and that develops from there. Fair play. That's boxing really clever. I think some of that stuff there. We don't have a huge amount of time because we've gone a little bit over, and we want to let people have a good chance to talk to Dan. So if there's any one or two questions there for any of the farmers, as difficult as you possibly can to try and grill these records, I'd be delighted. And if there isn't, there's no problem as well, because we have. We do this all the time, just personally. There's probably 100 people in Base Ireland, all their own time, volunteers, and we have great speakers through knots and people individually, on Zoom and in person, and it does create a great conversation, and you learn a lot from just, hanging out with these people and just, arguments and discussions and everyone telling you you're wrong and all that kind of thing. It's quite a productive thing. Sean, we have just about time for a question from you.
I don't know which one you can answer this, but sheep, you all have sheep. Do you see sheep as an integral part of fertility building for the cereals, or are they separate enterprises? And the reason I'm kind of asking that is you're going to see a whole plethora of new organically certified sheep owners from the west of Ireland, from Donegal to Kerry. They're not beaver finish land, but the discussion has to be, we're going to have to find somewhere to put them to finish them if they're going to end up in the organic stream. But and it's the same for conventional in that same context. But is there a role for cereal farmers in a biological or an organic perspective to be that over the winter hungry gap finishing?
Who wins that one?
You're kind of going into something that's going to go into bureaucracy now, because we've had certain changes where full-time tillage farmers, if they've no grass, they can't bring in sheep to graze cover crops. So we need to be careful on that one. I go extensive with finishing the lambs. It's all outdoors. Maybe there's stragglers at the end, they might get a little bit of meal, but it's basically grass and cover crops. And I would say in terms of return on investment, it's massive. Like you're looking 20 to 40%, you only have them for 3-4 months. And that's in conventional, going to the standard kill, no organic, no nothing. But as soon as you try and put scale on it, there's nothing there. So it's all about how you manage. It's system one.
And I just think on that rule needs to be probably looked at for sheep. Like, you need a certain percentage of lie-back, and you're not going to have that in each situation. And in my situation anyway, sheep are a very important part of my rotation. And as soon as I have my crops cut, it's straight into cover crop. And then I have the feed in for the sheep over the winter. I use gornet, I finish lambs on it. I need that, but I have lie-back areas, so I'm okay. But again, if you're just a tillage farmer and bringing in lambs, it seems a fantastic idea to keep them in the organic system and to get them finished, because obviously other people in the West maybe not be able to finish them, and you can put in your forage rapins, leafy turnip or whatever, and you get a great thrive on lambs in a tillage situation. But at the moment, as we're saying, it's probably not going to work.
Isn't it great to hear farmers say sheep are important in the system? Because normally you go, Jesus, that's great. Thanks, lads.
We actually have had store lambs in our farm for the last 5 years, and this is the first year we won't be having any because of this reason. And I think, to be fair, we have got volatility in our markets, we've volatility in our weather, and we've volatility on our input prices. And to be fair, the volatility on the regulation side of things is also a factor in farming now, and that was a frustrating one, that it came out of the blue. We had plans to keep going, and suddenly we weren't able to do it, and suddenly it changed and it was reviewed and there was some other version. So I feel like that when this policy is coming out, it needs to be ready. It can't be last minute, and it needs to be kind of run by people, say, look, is this going to work? Because you've got very well-meaning people who are very intelligent running the show, but maybe the boots on the ground are the people who are actually going to suffer this, and if it's wrong, it goes straight back up the line again. So maybe in the future we could kind of I feel they could do better for us on that one, so that we could keep going. Because like you say, those sheep, they're nearly like organic sheep, because you don't touch them. Once they're out and they're happy, they're eating cover crops and they're grand. I want to say a huge thank you to these three men for coming up here and bearing the public speaking and being honest about everything. Please show your